Hi, everyone. Welcome to a conversation about donor conception. And today we're going to have somebody here from Donor Conceived Council. I'm so excited. Melissa Bronco is going to be here, and she should be joining us any minute. Here she is. Okay, let's invite her on and get started. Let me just see. Melissa, can you join really quickly? There you go. Okay. Are you there? I think so. I think you should be there now. I'm accepting.
Hello.
Hi, here you are. I always those
Hi.
15 minutes always get to me the first few seconds of this.
Yeah, of course.
To get to me a little bit.
Yeah.
How are you?
I'm pretty good. How are you doing?
Good, good. I'm really, really excited to have this conversation today.
Yeah.
So thank you so much. And it's been so great connecting with you. So
Yes.
I
Oh my God. Same.
Yeah. So it always seems like we have so much to talk about when we get to chat.
Yeah, the time goes by so quick too.
Doesn't it? I mean, it's amazing. So I know today we were going to talk about a couple of things, right? We're going to talk about, first of all, the legislation, right?
Yes.
The New York State legislation for Donor Conceived Persons Protection Act.
Yeah. I can go ahead and give everybody a little bit of an overview. So for those of you who don't know, right now in New York State, there are two bills that a lot of people are trying to get passed. The first one is Bill 7602, and that one would require fertility clinics to corroborate all of a donor's self-reported history. That includes their medical history, their educational history, and their criminal background history, because right now they're not required to do that. In most of the country, some states have, fixed that in the past, but it's very lacking. So in New York State, we're trying to fix that. And there's another bill called 7569 that's called the fertility fraud bill, and that would make it illegal for fertility doctors basically for fertility doctors or any providers to inseminate or use a donor on a patient that the patient didn't consent to explicitly, because as a lot of you probably already know, fertility fraud, mainly when a doctor uses his own, if it's a male doctor, his own sperm on an unconsenting patient, that is shockingly very common and horrifyingly, legal right now.
It is.
Yeah.
Right? It's really unbelievable, and it's really practice that happens.
Yeah. So we're trying to fix that. It doesn't cover everything that needs to be done, but it's a huge, great, wonderful first step that if this can get passed, that would change the lives of so many people. So,
which one are you talking about? Both of them, or
both of them? Yeah. The first one's called the Donor Conceived People Protection Act, and the second one is called the Fertility Fraud Bill. Right.
So, I'm not as familiar with the second one. I am somewhat familiar with it, to be honest with you. The first one I'm much more familiar with, and I reached out to you to see if there was any feedback from the donor conceived persons community. I've been reaching out to a couple of communities just to find out what the feedback is, because I read the bill and it is a fabulous act. It really is. It's interesting that it was developed by two Republican senators. So it kind of shows that, fertility touches everybody. It doesn't really matter who you are, where you're from, where you live. But I thought it was kind of, I think the bill is broad and it covers a whole gamut of information.
Yeah.
And I don't know if anybody listening or, if there's any feedback or anything on the bill that maybe we should pay a little attention to as we move on.
One question I've gotten a couple of times actually is people were concerned about, I guess, whether or not the legislators behind it had true intentions, because they were afraid of the implications it would have on the LGBTQ community. And I really want everybody to know that that is not the case here. The woman who spearheaded this legislation, she got involved in this because she lost her son due to our fertility clinic basically not doing what they should have. They didn't corroborate the donor's self-reported history. He ended up dying of the same thing that she lost her son to, and they really just wish they had all the information so they could have given their son the best chance that he could have had too, because he also had something that is very responsive to early intervention at the very least. That they just knew that they were working with that's what they were up against. She might still have her son today too. And it's unfortunately not a one-off issue, although having it happen once is good enough reason to fix the problem.
That's that though.
Yeah.
It's really important for people to recognize this is not a one-off situation.
Yeah.
It's a horrible situation. It does happen, but this one got attention.
Yes.
And it finally got attention. So I give the parents a lot of credit for the work that they did and the effort they put in to bring attention to it. One of the things we're trying to do, and I'm definitely going to let everybody listening here know that we are putting together, and I have issued a survey. I know I've gotten a couple of feedback on it where people, may not like all of the wording, and that is not my intention to offend anybody at all. My intention is to substantiate the need for medical information to be obtained at the time of medical intake. And so very much trying to swap out the word on the medical intake form. I'm going to try and read what everybody's writing. I'm going to very much trying to swap out the word on the medical intake form from other to donor and adoption.
Yeah.
So and begin to open up that conversation in the medical community. And I think all of this just goes hand in hand, right? It's kind of like this is the starting point, but we're continuing on the continuum of what we need to know.
Definitely. Yeah, too. And your survey is super important because I can't tell you how many times I've been in a doctor's appointment and they didn't ask for anything, but if it comes up that I'm donor conceived, they don't know what to do with that information because it doesn't come up enough for them to really know how to handle it. And which is not their fault, of course, it just needs more exposure and it needs to be normalized more. And I think this is going to make a huge impact in that direction.
I hope so. I absolutely hope so because we want to open up the community. We want to open this up and we want people to feel comfortable in
definitely
having conversations and discussing conversations and medical information is important. And so we do have a comment there. I don't know if you could see it or not.
Oh, yes. Oh, wait. Which one? The address. Wait, sorry, you go on. You go first.
No, well, we have a comment there right now talking about that the feedback that's been received from the LGBTQ community.
Oh, yes.
About the app.
Yeah, definitely too. And that's something that, it makes me really sad that sometimes, it's a valid concern that, what if people are doing this to further marginalize people who are not straight? And that's a valid concern. It happens in this country a lot. And the one thing I can say for sure is that the woman who is working on this legislation, she has 100% pure intention. She just wants to help donor conceived people live the best lives that they can.
So. What is the issue exactly with the LGBT community for those who aren't aware of it? Can you speak to it at all? I don't want to.
Yeah. So the main thing I've seen is just people are concerned with the politicians who are backing it, that maybe they have, I guess, for lack of a better word, maybe ulterior motives, or that maybe they are trying to further marginalize people that don't have the best shot normally, if you know what I mean. But that's not something that's going on. And I understand based on, some people are concerned based on who's supporting it, but that's not what's happening here. Yeah.
I want to understand where the marginalization comes in because of people who are having children who either are single moms or single dads or, gay couples or somebody who's transgender. The bill seems to be open to everybody.
Yes.
And that's how I read it. So I want to be sure I'm not missing anything when I communicate my thoughts on it.
Yeah, no, the bill doesn't even say who can or cannot donate or receive donated gametes. It's just about ensuring the best shot for donor conceived people, basically. I guess maybe where people are coming from is if that politician has a bad track record with being an ally to people from that community, then I understand where that concern is coming from.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I started off saying it's two Republican senators that still, and that was wild. And I think, when we look at people like Dick Cheney, right? Mm-hmm. His daughter is gay, and she is in the Senate, and, he is a staunch Republican, and it seems like, I don't know that she's a staunch Republican, but she certainly sees things in the U.S. in a light where, unfortunately, lots of political things are happening that I don't want to get involved with. But I think what happens is when we talk about fertility, it touches home. for so many people.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and if 1 in 8 people, I think it's actually higher, but if 1 in 8 people is touched by a fertility journey, that means that so many people are touched by all of this.
Yeah. We all know somebody who, whether even if, you know, people who aren't donor conceived or think they don't know anybody who, you know, faces those issues, I can tell you, you do. You definitely do.
You do.
We all do.
And it's so fabulous that you're able to put a face to it.
Mm-hmm.
Like everybody who, all the donor conceived people who are now not little children anymore, but adults are able to put a face to it and say, here I am, you know, and I am happy and fine, or, you know, wanting to understand more and wanting to, you know, still caring about my parents, but wanting to understand where I genetically am related and who I'm related to.
Yeah, definitely. And for so many donor conceived people too, I think sometimes it's easy for someone who's not familiar with these problems to write off DCP's concerns as, oh, they're just angry, they're just upset, their inner child is, you know, stuff like that. That it's not a problem with the fertility industry. You're just upset about what happened to you. And like that's not the case too. And I'm hoping that the work that we're doing here can, like you said, bring a face to not just infertility, but DCP, donor conceived people, and show that it's not just about giving people babies. It's not just about giving people families. It's about when those babies grow up, what's in their best interest. Is blocking their medical history in their best interest? Is not, you know, corroborating their biological parents' self-reported medical history so they have all the information? Is that in their best interest? Like, and so I'm hoping that this exposure and DCP speaking up can really make people realize, like, oh wow, like these are problems that are affecting people's lives.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and you know, some of the work I do is work with recipient parents, which, you know, and to me that's such a good starting point, because if the recipient parent is comfortable, then with their journey on how they had a child, then they can hopefully communicate that to the child, where the child understands how they
definitely. Yeah, and so you're right too, because there's a lot of shame surrounding it, and I think that largely contributes to the secrecy and why so many DCP are finding out later in life. I found out later in life, and I could tell that my mom had a lot of shame around it too, and I just think it's one of those things where pain and shame and secrecy, that just begets more pain, shame, and secrecy, and you're just passing that on to your child. And there's no reason to be ashamed of these things at all. It's just if you keep it a secret, that's not going to bring you a good outcome for your child or for you or your family. It's just always best to be open.
It is best, and sometimes it's a struggle for the recipient parent. And you know, what we want to do is try and help them, or what I want to try and do, and other therapists, is help them through that process. So that
so important.
It is important, because, you know, we want them to be able. That pain is grief, much of the time. It's grief, and it's like a dream that you had, or it's societal impact, you know, and it has nothing to do with the joy of having a child. It just has to do with, you know, what you had to struggle with to get there. So it's two different journeys, and it lots of times we look at it as the same, but it's truly not. And it's so important, I think, for donor conceived people when they're little to recognize, or if you find out later in life, you know, when you're an adult like you were, and, you know, we've talked, and I hope you don't mind me sharing, you know, you've had, like, you know, a wonderful relationship with your mom and understanding. But it's hard to understand for a lot of people the way you did. I think we want parents who have raised children, to understand that they are the parent and to feel comfortable in that. So I was talking to somebody yesterday. It was a really interesting conversation, somebody who I work with. And she is going to be a single mother by choice. She's a little bit older, so she's going to be using a donor egg and a donor sperm. And we talked about, or I brought up the fact of the clinics that she's looking at, or the banks that she's looking at. She was asking me about them, and I said, you know, I would encourage you to look at banks where there are known donations. And because she's so early on in her journey to have a child, she was taken back by that statement. And so the way I framed it after we talked was, it's always good to have the option.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You don't want to close that door. You want that option available to you. Mm-hmm. And so if any recipient parents or intended parents are listening to this, I would strongly recommend that while you're going through your process and your grief and trying to understand how to tell your child how they were conceived, that you very much think of keeping options open.
Yeah,
so
that too. And I would also recommend, reading from donor conceived adults about their experiences too, just to hopefully get a better perspective of your future child. So
yeah, I think that's so important. And so these two acts are instrumental.
Yeah.
They really are, because just to circle back, they're so instrumental, because what they do is they allow people to feel recognized and to advocate, which is empowering, and to stand up for what's right. Like there's right and wrong, really.
Yeah.
And it just seems right.
Yeah, too. And some people I've also seen say is, oh, well, you can't guarantee that you'll know everyone's medical history. I'm like, yeah, that's true. That's true. Stuff happens too. It's just the problem with the clinics right now is that they are able to legally block you from knowing any of your history. And I called because my brother had like a health emergency when we first found out we were donor conceived too. He almost lost his eyesight. And I was like, can you like tell us if anything? And they could not. They were like, we cannot help you. They actually got annoyed. And I'm like, this is just so messed up, and there are so many people that, and we're lucky, but that's a lucky outcome because we're still here. He still has his eyesight. He was able to take care of it. Like he messed up his schooling and everything, but that's what it could have been way worse too. And I think that's just what, I would like people to be more aware of, is that this is people's entire lives. That's your life trajectory there for, even though it's one person, that's not just one person, you know what I mean? But like that's someone's entire life. Yeah. That's generational too. My future kids are going to have to be impacted by this. Yeah.
Yeah. Because it's going to be your baby too,
Yeah.
Children too. So it is generational. I'm so grateful that you were able to help your brother, and and that early intervention is essential.
Yeah.
If they go down the wrong road because they didn't ask the right questions, then we want to circumvent that. So that they can get to the place.
Yeah, that too. Asking the right questions, having the information, knowing what questions you even need to ask, because a lot of the times too, and it makes me sad to be aware of this, but the fertility clinics, it's very profitable for them to, not have these rules. And it's just, there are people being created here, and we got to make sure that we're giving them their best shot, just like anybody else.
That was my thought when I read the bill, honestly. When I read the bill, I'm going to, you and I were talking, and I'm going to try and be in communication about the bill from my perspective. And when I read the bill, that was my thought. It's going to perpetuate like a whole string of action.
I hope so, yeah.
Absolutely. And so it's now instilling that action and putting the parameters around that action. That's going to be an interesting task, right? So,
yeah. I do see a lot more people becoming aware of these issues, which gives me a lot of hope that change is on the horizon.
Well, people like you are doing that.
Yeah. Yeah, we are.
They see you and they understand you, and it's no longer a concept in their mind. It's a real person.
Yeah. And that's exactly what we're trying to do at Donor Conceived Council. We're run all by donor conceived people. We're saying, here we are. Here's the problems with the industry. We're living proof of it. We're a fraction of the living proof. And here are some changes that can really help this population of people.
So I believe in advocacy. I am a strong advocate for fertility in general. And I am becoming a stronger advocate for the donor conceived community.
Thank you for that.
And it all happened through my practice. I mean, that.
Yeah.
It's all an outgrowth of the people who I've worked with. And it's so important that we recognize the needs of people. And so I'm wondering, like, from your perspective, what you think would be helpful for people, what we would share with them that they could do to help themselves or to help the community at large.
Just people in general, or like parents, or
anybody. Just
anybody.
I can't throw it open there.
Yeah, I mean,
has any of those comments?
Yeah, the first thing that comes to mind is just, I find that, and like obviously the people watching this are the people who are already listening to donor conceived people, but in general, just listen to donor conceived people when they tell you the problems that they face, because, and like, I get it. These problems aren't, very widespread in terms of awareness yet, but, you see a lot of people commenting on maybe like articles about these issues who this is their first time being exposed to this problem. They say, oh, well, your parent's still your parent. Oh, well, like nobody knows their medical history anyway. I'm like, okay, like that's not what we're saying here. And so just really take the time to try and understand exactly the problems that we're facing, so then you can ask the right questions from there on and know what work needs to be done. That's really important too. And also, just if you're not donor conceived, or even if you are, like if you want to, just spread the word that these problems are a thing. It's our number one barrier, probably, or in some senses, of getting change to happen, is that not a lot of people are aware. The amount of times that I've told people, yeah, it's legal in about 45, 43 states right now for doctors to inseminate their own patients, and people were shocked. People have no idea. Even I took a policy class a couple weeks ago. This one guy, he used to work at the Government Accountability Office. He's the one who graded my papers. He had no idea about this. And he's like, I know about a lot of policy issues, but this is new. I'm like, yep, here you go. So just spread awareness. Yeah.
Yeah, so what I would say, if you don't mind me adding on to that, is in spreading awareness, everybody is different and everybody has their own comfort level. So it's good to start where you're comfortable starting.
Yes.
If you're somebody who's kind of quiet, and you really don't like to share too much, maybe when you go to your doctor, share it with your doctor and get that conversation going. Maybe share it like in a group of your friends. For others who like to speak a little louder, maybe get involved in policy change. I do have letters on my Linktree. If you want to send a letter to a congressman, or you want to send a letter somewhere saying, we want people to be recognized, and mine are specifically for the medical community, right? But wherever you're comfortable, start that conversation. And if you find that you're struggling a little bit, well, reach out for some support.
Yeah.
Like there's nothing wrong with that, because nobody is in this alone. And I think people sometimes have a private struggle. And
yeah. Everybody has a way that they can help in a capacity that's best for them. And when we say help, we don't mean do everything all at once, because that's a lot of pressure to put on one person. But I think that everybody has one person in their life, one way that they can use their own skills and abilities to make a difference. Even if you get through to one person, that's a whole person, and you don't know where that will lead down the line. So
right. So, really the significance here is that we now have the ear of legislature, which is incredible.
Yeah.
And through that, I think it'll help people feel more confident in the journey that they've taken or how they've been conceived. And through that, maybe people will start to find less isolation and feel more support and feel as if they can use their voice in one way or another to start to advocate. And the word advocating is sometimes big, but it's really just standing up for what you believe, whether it's privately within like, a friend circle or a family circle, or it's like, being on an Instagram Live or from a pillar, whatever it is that you.
And for people who are interested in the policy aspect, right now, like the number one thing we really need is for everyone to call their state senators and express that you support the bill and that you want them to as well. So if you are in New York, or you know somebody who is in New York, please pick up the phone, call your legislator, and let them know that this is important. I will say, if you're interested in the policy advocacy, we need that.
Right. And depending on where you're at, whatever you need, there's people and there's services available there. And there's a huge community that is, I think so wonderfully coming forward right now, lending hand and lend support wherever you're at.
Yeah.
So, anyway, thank you so much for coming on today to talk about this.
Thank you for having me, Lori. This is fun.
Yeah, no, it's my pleasure. I really think that the bills are so important, and letting people know that there's support available and advocacy and things that they could do. And, I want to thank you also for having, to put up the information about the survey. I have gotten quite a few responses.
Awesome. I'm so glad.
I will be using everybody's responses and comments I got some great comments from the donor conceived community and from recipient parents that will be very, very helpful as I work towards trying to have this change. And anybody who's interested in helping, I am always open to any help.
Awesome. Love that. And yeah, same at DCC too. We're very responsive over DM and email. So if anybody has questions or really anything that they want to share with us, feel free to let us know.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you. And this will be on my my page. So if anybody wants to listen or has any comments afterwards, because lots of times people listen after, please reach out. Okay. We will absolutely be available, or I'll be available to look at the questions, and really want to hear feedback whenever possible. So thank you.
Thank you, Lori. Okay. And thanks everybody who came on.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay.
Do my best to say this. Okay.
Okay.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.